I never wanted a big party. Not for my 37th. I even told Emily that more than once, actually. Low-key, I'd said, maybe a couple drinks at the Fox and Fig, then home by 10. That sounded about right. A quiet evening. Simple, predictable, comfortable. We weren't flashy people. At least, I thought we weren't. So when I pulled up to this sleek-looking building on the corner of a quiet block in Savannah, a photography studio, apparently, I was confused. I checked the address twice, thinking maybe the GPS had glitched. Then I saw the valet waiting by the curb and the soft flicker of string lights glowing from inside. Okay, so something was happening. When I stepped through the front doors, the whole room bloomed with warm lighting and the sound of old jazz records spinning on a vintage player in the corner. The scent of roasted garlic, pinewood, and perfume hung in the air. There were candles on every surface, real candles, not the LED kind we kept at home. Music hummed beneath the chatter, and framed photographs of Emily and me, weddings, vacations, that goofy picture from our first apartment with the broken couch were carefully arranged on floating shelves around the room. There must have been 40 people there. Maybe more. And not just friends, colleagues, clients, neighbors I hadn't spoken to in months. Everyone was dressed like they were expecting a gala, not a birthday. The thought hit me then, I was underdressed. I glanced down at my polo and jeans, suddenly wishing I'd worn literally anything else. Someone handed me a drink. I didn't catch who. It was one of those spicy-smelling cocktails that looked like it belonged on a rooftop bar. I barely had time to sip it before people started pulling me aside, shaking my hand, clapping my back, telling me how lucky I was to have a wife like Emily. She really outdid herself, one woman said, leaning in like we were old friends. She's been planning this for weeks. Weeks? Funny. I hadn't noticed. Then again, Emily had been working late, a lot lately. Out of town more than usual. Always on calls. Always planning something. I smiled, nodded, made the rounds, but my brain was somewhere else. Then I saw her. Emily stood by the bar, laughing, her head tilted slightly like she was sharing a private joke. She looked incredible, like she'd stepped off the cover of some coastal lifestyle magazine. Hair perfectly waved, a satin emerald dress hugging her like it had been made just for her. I caught myself staring, and then I saw who she was laughing with. He was tall. Way taller than me, 6'3" at least, wearing a fitted navy shirt with the sleeves rolled up like he'd just painted a house or broken hearts for a living. He had that casually confident energy, like the room shifted a little when he moved. And right then, he wasn't just standing next to Emily. He was close. Too close. His hand rested lightly on her wrist, not in a creepy way, just familiar. Comfortable. She leaned in, laughing, and then, this part's burned into my memory, she placed her hand gently on his chest. Not for long. A second. Maybe two. But it happened. I took a step toward them without thinking. The crowd around me disappeared. I don't remember weaving through people or setting down my drink. I just remember the way her body flinched when she saw me, how fast her hand dropped back to her side like it had caught fire. Her smile didn't vanish, but something changed. It tightened. Got thinner around the edges. Oh, she said, turning toward me. Trevor. There you are. The guy turned too, casually, like he hadn't just been whispering something into my wife's ear. She touched my arm, maybe to steer the moment. I want you to meet someone. This is Logan. We went to school together. Logan. That name clicked faintly, like a memory I wasn't sure was mine. Had she mentioned him before? Maybe in passing, years ago. I wasn't sure. Logan extended a hand. His smile was confident, measured. Good to meet you, man. Emily's told me a lot. I shook his hand. Firm grip. Too firm. The kind that's just a little too practiced. Likewise, I said, but I didn't mean it. Emily laughed lightly, but her eyes were scanning my face. Total goofball back in college, she added, her voice a bit too high-pitched. Used to pull all-nighters and live on Red Bull and Hot Pockets. Some things never change, Logan said with a grin, nudging her shoulder. The way they looked at each other, I can't fully explain it. It wasn't obvious. If you were watching from across the room, you'd probably miss it. But I didn't. There was a rhythm between them. An ease. Like this wasn't the first time they'd been in each other's orbit lately. Emily must have seen something in my expression because she stepped closer and looped her arm around mine. Let me steal the birthday boy for a second, she said cheerfully, guiding me away before I could say another word. Once we were a few steps into the crowd, I leaned in. Who is that really? She blinked, caught off guard. I told you, Logan. We had econ together. He was in that study group I mentioned once, remember? I didn't. Thought you hadn't spoken to anyone from college in years. Well, yeah, not really. But we reconnected through a mutual friend. He moved to Atlanta last year. She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. My throat felt dry. You're really close with him? She tilted her head like she didn't understand the question. What? No. He just happened to be in town this weekend. I invited him, that's all. That's all. I nodded, but my chest was tight. The rest of the night blurred. I tried to be present, to accept toasts and laugh at stories, to smile for the photos Emily insisted we'd take with the guests. But every time I caught a glimpse of Logan from across the room, standing a little too close to Emily's friends or watching her when she wasn't looking, I felt that same knot twisting tighter. He didn't linger by the bar all night. He floated, talked to other people, seemed like a charming guy. But I noticed how his gaze always drifted back to her. How he knew when to fade into the background and when to appear beside her like he belonged there. At one point, I found myself watching them from a distance, maybe 20 feet away. She was laughing again, her hand brushing her collarbone, and Logan said something I couldn't hear. She leaned toward him just a little, and in that moment, it felt like the entire party wasn't for me at all. It felt like I was the stranger. And here's the worst part, she made it all seem so normal. So effortless. Like I was imagining things. Like I'd let my insecurities get the better of me. Maybe I had. Or maybe, just maybe, I'd seen a truth neither of them meant for me to see. Because as polished as her smile was, as smooth as the introductions and explanations went, I couldn't shake the way she pulled away the second she saw me. The way her eyes had widened just enough to show surprise. Or guilt. That night when we got home, she was all over me. Laughing, buzzed, clumsy in the way she always got when she'd had just enough champagne to feel bold. She called the party a smash, said I was weirdly quiet, but chalked it up to me not liking surprises. And maybe that was true. Maybe I hated surprises. But not nearly as much as I hated the feeling I had in my gut, the one I couldn't put into words, not yet. The one whispering that wasn't nothing. After the party, things didn't return to normal. At least, not for me. Emily was radiant the next morning. She kept replaying moments from the night like it was a highlight reel. Who complimented the food? How well the decorations turned out. The custom playlist she'd built. She was proud, and fair enough, she'd pulled off something elaborate. Everyone had a good time. Everyone told me how lucky I was. But I couldn't stop thinking about that look. That hesitation in her eyes. The way she pulled away from Logan. The way her smile had faltered, just barely, but enough to plant a splinter of doubt in my brain. And once the splinter was there, I started noticing other things too. Small things at first. The way her phone never left her side anymore. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen at night, but now it followed her from room to room. It was always face down. Always silent. If a text lit up the screen, her hand *T toward it like a reflex. She started showering immediately when she came home. Not just after long days or workouts, every time. Even after a quick trip to the store or coffee with a friend. Straight to the bathroom. Door locked. Water on. She said she'd been sweating a lot lately. Hormonal. Stress, maybe? I nodded and pretended to accept that. She also started buying clothes I'd never seen before, lingerie with tags from boutiques I didn't recognize, designer bags she said were deep discount steals. But we weren't exactly swimming in money. Our business had been slow for months. We'd cut back on expenses. Or at least I had. Then there were the trips. Emily started going to Atlanta more often. First it was a weekend for networking. Then a Tuesday to Thursday stretch for a client pitch. At one point, she said she was going to a leadership retreat, the kind where you're supposed to find yourself by eating overpriced boxed lunches in hotel ballrooms. I remember nodding and kissing her goodbye, watching her roll her suitcase out the door. But when I looked at our joint account later, I saw a charge for an expensive steakhouse, not the one the retreat had mentioned. A dinner for two. Wine pairing. That alone wasn't proof, but it didn't sit right. None of it did. It felt like our marriage had a silent alarm system, one only I could hear. Every ding, every buzz, every love you text that arrived, just a little too perfectly worded. All of it made me feel like I was going crazy. And yet, I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was projecting stress onto her. That Logan showing up at the party was just a coincidence. That her pulling away meant nothing. That her sudden uptick in grooming and perfume and gym visits didn't mean she was seeing someone. Just that she was reclaiming some confidence. She was always posting affirmations on Instagram. New era, main character energy. No one owes you clarity. I tried to convince myself those weren't red flags. But I wasn't blind. Just slow to accept the obvious. The worst part was how warm she still was when we were around other people. Always touching my arm, kissing my cheek. But it started to feel staged, performed, like she was overcompensating, like she was trying to throw me off the scent. Even though I wasn't a bloodhound, I didn't want to catch her. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence kept stacking up. There was the time she accidentally airdropped me a reservation for a hotel in Midtown Atlanta, under a different name. Madison Taylor. When I asked her about it, she blinked and laughed, said she was helping her friend Madison plan a surprise weekend for her boyfriend. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But the truth is, Madison lives in Colorado. We hadn't seen her in 2 years. Then there were the Uber receipts. She told me she was staying at the Hilton, but her ride history showed her being dropped off at the Lowe's. I only saw it because she used our joint card by mistake, something she rarely did anymore. I didn't know what I was looking for at the time. I wasn't trying to trap her. I wasn't tracking her movements or hacking into her emails. I was just seeing things, letting them pile up, like how she used to get excited when I cooked dinner. Now she always ate half and said she was full. How she started wearing jewelry I didn't recognize. And when I asked, she'd smile and say, "Oh, this? I've had it forever." I hadn't seen it once in a decade. It got to the point where her laughter made me nervous. I'd hear her on the phone, giggling in that soft, playful tone I hadn't heard in months. Only it wasn't with me. And when I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd shrug and say, "Just work stuff. Work stuff." That became the phrase of the month. Then one night she came home late. She was wearing red lipstick, smudged just slightly at the corners, and heels I'd never seen before. When I opened the door, she froze for half a second, then launched into a story about a networking mixer running late. I stood there nodding while the scent of men's cologne drifted off her like it was clinging for dear life. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. I wanted to ask. I really did. But the words stuck in my throat. I knew if I opened that door, I couldn't close it again. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. But the moment that really broke something in me, the moment I couldn't forget, happened while we were watching a movie. She had fallen asleep on the couch next to me. Her phone buzzed. Not once. Not twice. 3 times. I glanced at the screen. The name said L. Just L. No last name. No emoji. Just the letter. The preview of the message was small, but I could make out a few words. "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about your dress." My breath caught. Emily stirred, mumbling something in her sleep, and I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't open the message. Couldn't. Not then. But something shifted in me. A line had been crossed. Maybe I'd been stupid. Maybe I'd been willfully blind. But in that moment, I knew, in my gut, in my bones, that I wasn't imagining things anymore. I stood up and went to the kitchen, stared at the backsplash tiles we'd picked out together 3 summers ago, thought about the life we'd built, the trips, the long nights, the dreams, and I realized something heartbreaking. I wasn't trying to save our marriage anymore. I was just trying to confirm how broken it was. The thing about truth is, once it's cracked open, even just a little, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending everything's okay. You can't tuck it away neatly like a bill in the mail you plan to deal with later. It sits there, staring at you from across the room, daring you to say it out loud. That's where I was. Still technically in my marriage, still waking up next to Emily, still eating dinner across from her like things were normal, but in my head I was already gone. Emotionally packing boxes, replaying moments, re-examining her words, her tone, the way she kissed me goodnight but kept her phone on vibrate. And then it happened. The confirmation. The thing I didn't even know I was waiting for. It was 2 days after the party. A rainy Tuesday. I was home early thanks to a client call getting pushed. Emily was out running errands, which these days felt like code for something else entirely. I was on the couch, half watching a rerun of some HGTV show, trying to ignore the tension coiled inside me like a spring. And then I sat down. Literally. I sat on the couch and felt something hard wedged between the armrest and the cushion. I reached in and pulled out an old iPhone. Emily's old phone. I stared at it for a second, confused. She'd told me she traded it in. That's what she said the day she came home with the newer model and a smirk about how she finally upgraded. But here it was. Still functional. Still logged in. Still hers. I turned it over in my hands. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I had some kind of moral struggle. I didn't. The second the screen lit up, I was already searching. The battery was low, but it still had service. And most importantly, it had messages. She hadn't wiped it. Or maybe she didn't think she needed to. I opened the Messages app. Most of it was old conversations, family group texts, chat threads with coworkers. But one stood out. Not because of the name, but because of how it wasn't a name at all. Just L. I tapped it. The most recent message had come in while I held the phone in my hand, like fate had personally signed off on the timing. It read, "Still thinking about Saturday night. The dress. You. The way you looked when you said my name." My stomach dropped. Below it were more texts stretching back weeks. Maybe months. It didn't take long to piece together the story. They'd met in Atlanta, at first for drinks, then for dinners, then hotel rooms. The messages weren't just flirtatious. They were an asterisk, mate. Personal. They referenced private jokes. Memories. Plans. Rooms booked again, same spot as last time. Bring that black set I like. You should see the way he looks at you. Still has no idea. It's almost cute. If I had my way, I'd never let you go back home. I stopped breathing for a second. I scrolled further. My fingers were trembling, but I couldn't stop. There were pictures. Not explicit, but suggestive enough. Hotel room mirrors. Low lighting. Selfies in bed. Her hair was messy. Her eyes sleepy but smiling. I knew that smile. Or I thought I did. There were voice notes too. I put in my AirPods like I was committing a crime, and maybe I was invading her privacy, reading messages that weren't meant for me. But when I pressed play and heard her voice, laughing, truly laughing, telling Elle that she felt more alive than she had in years, I knew I wasn't invading anything. This was already mine. This was my life. My marriage. My home. And it was burning. She even joked about me once. He still doesn't suspect a thing. I think he's too nice. That's the problem with good men, they don't look for the trap until they're in it. I stared at that message for a long time. I'd always been proud of being kind. Of listening. Supporting her dreams. Being patient during her meltdowns. Holding it together when she said she needed space or growth. I thought I was being a good husband. Turns out, I was being a fool. My whole world shifted in that moment. Not because of the infidelity, I think deep down I already knew, but because of the ease. The boldness. The way she laughed about me with another man. Like I was some side character in the life she was really living. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. I started backing everything up. Screensh *TS. Audio files. Dates. Hotel confirmations. Every message from Elle, every photo, every timestamp. I created a folder and labeled it for clarity. Because that's what I needed now. Not revenge. Not drama. Just clarity. I cross-referenced her trips to Atlanta with our bank statements. It lined up. She'd claimed she was staying at the Hilton for a company retreat in March, but her Uber receipts showed her going to a boutique hotel called the Ivy. Elle mentioned it in one of the messages too. Said the view was better. Said she looked amazing against the windows. My hands were steady. Too steady, maybe? I think when your heart breaks that completely, your body goes into survival mode. The panic had passed. All that remained was a cold, quiet resolve. I went through the rest of her texts. There were messages to friends, too, people who'd clearly known about Elle. A couple even encouraged it. One said, "If he's not making you feel wanted, someone else will. Life's too short to stay bored." That one hit me hard. Because I wasn't perfect. I knew that. I'd been tired, distracted. Running our business, juggling deadlines, trying to keep our bills paid. I wasn't always attentive. I didn't always remember the small stuff. But I never once looked outside our marriage for comfort. Not once. I didn't know who Elle was exactly, but I had a guess. And it wasn't a stretch. The man from the party. Logan. The college friend. The guy whose eyes didn't blink when I showed up at my own birthday. It was the way he touched her wrist. The way she pulled away. It was all right there. I sat with that thought for a long time. And then I made another folder. I labeled this one Evidence Legal. Just in case. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But I wanted to be ready. Because I couldn't unknow this. I couldn't go back to pretending. She walked in about an hour later. Wet from the rain, hair curled at the ends, shopping bags in her hands. She kissed me on the cheek and apologized for taking so long. Said the lines were crazy. I nodded. Smiled even. I didn't say anything about the phone. I didn't ask who Elle was. Not yet. Because I had a feeling that once I said the words out loud, everything would change. And I wasn't ready for that final blow. Not until I had everything I needed. Not until I knew I could walk away with my head held high. That night, while she was in the shower, I pulled the old phone out again and double-checked the backup. I uploaded it all to a cloud account she didn't know I had. I labeled each folder, sorted by date, added cross-references to bank statements and hotel receipts. It was methodical, detached, clinical almost. But beneath the surface I was unraveling. Because I wasn't just collecting evidence of her affair. I was watching the last 7 years of my life dissolve into a slideshow of lies. And the worst part? I still loved her. That's what made it hurt. That's what made it real. You'd think the worst part of betrayal is the moment you find out. The text, the photo, the voicemail you weren't meant to hear. And yeah, that part's brutal. But what really breaks you? What eats you alive from the inside out? It's what comes after. It's pretending nothing's wrong when your entire world is shattered under your feet. Sitting across from someone who's smiling like nothing happened while every nerve in your body screams that everything has. That's what I did. After I found Emily's old phone wedged in the couch, after I read every text from Elle, after I listened to the audio files of her laughing, teasing, lying, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I went still. I went silent. I let her think I didn't know a thing. I played my role, the husband who believed her stories, who still kissed her goodbye at the door, who still asked how her meetings in Atlanta were going. And while I did that, I built my case. That same night, after she fell asleep, I sat at my laptop in the dark with a desk lamp glowing like a crime scene spotlight. I opened a spreadsheet, created columns, date, event, her story, reality, evidence type. It felt cold, robotic, but it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I started with the hotel receipts. Matched them to texts from Elle, cross-referenced with our joint credit card. There was the Lowe's Hotel in March, the one she said was for a company retreat. But her Uber drop-off time was 6:07 p.m. Her message to Elle? In the room. Showering now. You coming up. Then April. She told me she was at a tech conference near Peachtree. Her story was that the company had given them vouchers for dinner at the hotel buffet. But the charges showed a different narrative, a sushi place miles away from the venue, followed by a room service order at the W Hotel. Her messages that night? Full of emojis, wine talk, and lingerie references. I took **TS of everything. Every lie she told me had a timestamp. A trail. I wasn't guessing anymore. This wasn't suspicion, it was fact. I was documenting a different kind of history, the one she tried to keep hidden. The version of our life that ran parallel to mine. Secret. Careful, cruel. And it wasn't just the affair. It was how seamlessly she built around it. Emily didn't just cheat. She planned. She covered her tracks with precision. She used work trips, friend nights, girls' brunches, even charity events as fronts. There were receipts for Uber rides to addresses that weren't hotels or restaurants. I Googled them. One was a loft apartment. Another, a short-term rental. She had patterns. Monday night, Pilates. Wednesday, late client call. Friday, networking, drinks. She had routines, and once I started mapping them out, they practically told their own story. I saved everything to a secure cloud account. Then I created backups on 2 encrypted drives. One I stashed at work. The other I gave to my older brother, who I hadn't even told yet. I just said, don't open this unless I ask you to. He looked at me weird, but he didn't ask questions. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about survival. Because once you know the truth, the next step isn't confrontation. It's control. I started watching her differently. Every time she said she was heading to Whole Foods, I noted the time she left and the time she came back. One day, she was gone almost 2 hours. She walked in smiling, holding a brown bag with blueberries, hummus, and flowers like she'd just wandered the aisles in a daze. But her phone buzzed before she put it down. I saw the name flash across the screen, Elle. I didn't look at the message. I didn't have to. I copied the time and logged it in the sheet. And still, I said nothing. It felt like I was living a double life, the version of me who smiled over dinner and asked about her clients, and the version who was quietly building a case to take back his own dignity. Some nights I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her soft breathing, wondering if she dreamed of him. Wondering how long ago she stopped dreaming of me. Other nights I'd get up and pace the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just walked. Like if I kept moving, I wouldn't fall into the pit that was opening beneath me. There was this one night, maybe a week after I found the phone, when she reached for me in her sleep. Her hand touched mine, and she mumbled my name. It should have meant something. A moment of softness. But all I felt was cold. Because I didn't know who she was anymore. During the day, I started recording our conversations, not the private stuff, not anything violating, just the casual chats where she mentioned plans, clients, reasons for being gone. I wanted a timeline. I wanted to match her words against the reality I was digging up. And the more I listened, the more I realized how good she was at lying. Not dramatic soap opera lies. Just smooth, practiced, subtle ones. A detail here. A name swap there. Just enough truth to sell the rest. She even had alibis. She mentioned coworkers who vouched for meetings that never happened. Claimed to be attending events that didn't exist on any public calendar. And when I checked her Instagram, there were posts carefully timed, carefully cropped that made it all look legitimate. But the metadata didn't lie. A beach photo she claimed was from a wellness retreat was actually snapped at 7:12 p.m. inside a hotel room. I found the matching decor on the hotel's website, down to the gold lamp and the velvet curtains. I included the photo in my evidence folder, labeled False Retreat Narrative. By the end of the second week, I had enough data to tell her story better than she could. That's when I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer. I didn't want a dramatic courtroom battle. I wasn't interested in dragging her through the mud. But I needed to protect myself. Our finances. My sanity. I walked into the office with a flash drive and a printed spreadsheet. The lawyer raised an eyebrow when I handed it over. "You've done more work than most private investigators," she said, half impressed. I didn't feel proud. I felt empty. She looked through the materials, nodding slowly. "You have everything you need," she said. "This isn't going to be a problem." I asked about our assets, the house, the business. She laid out a plan. Clean. Direct. Fair, if not favorable to me. I could walk away with my share, no debt, and a clear record. "You're in a strong position," she said. But all I could think was, this wasn't supposed to be a battle. It was supposed to be love. It was supposed to be trust. When I got home that day, Emily was lighting candles in the living room. Some kind of aromatherapy thing. She smiled at me like everything was fine. "Dinner's in the oven," she said. I kissed her on the cheek and went upstairs. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. I looked the same. But I wasn't. She still didn't know what I knew. And I still hadn't decided when to tell her. But I was close. Because the silence was becoming unbearable. And the case I built in secret was almost complete. It was a Saturday morning when I decided I couldn't hold it in anymore. Not anger. Not grief. Just the weight of pretending. The effort it took to keep playing along with a version of my life that had stopped being real months ago. Emily was still upstairs, asleep or pretending to be. I didn't care. I got up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, our table, with the folder. Not a metaphorical one this time. A real folder. Matte black. Thick with paper. Inside it, every screenshot *T, every chat log, every receipt, every image. Categorized, printed, labeled. It was all there. A timeline. A map. The anatomy of a betrayal laid out in full. I placed it next to her coffee mug, the one that said "Wake up and be fabulous" in curling gold letters. She loved that mug. I used to find it endearing. Now it felt like a punchline. The clock ticked past 8 o'clock. The house was still quiet. Outside, the sky was soft gray, like it hadn't decided if it wanted to rain or not. I didn't pace. I didn't rehearse. I just waited. At 8:37, I heard her feet hit the floor upstairs. Her slow shuffle. Then the soft creak of the stairs, one step at a time. She entered the kitchen yawning, hair in a loose bun, wearing the oversized sweatshirt she always stole from me when the weather dropped. She looked ordinary. Comfortable. Familiar. Until she saw the folder. "What's this?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. I didn't answer. I just pointed at it. "You should open it." She hesitated. "Trevor." "Open it," I said again. She picked it up slowly, almost delicately, like it might explode. When she peeled back the cover and saw the first page, an email printout with a photo of her and Logan outside a hotel, her face changed. Her breath caught. She flipped to the next page. Then the next. Her fingers started to tremble. Receipts. Timestamps. Messages. A selfie of her in bed, face barely lit by a bedside lamp, captioned, "Missed this already." She didn't speak. By the time she got halfway through, she lowered the folder and looked at me. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes were wide, bloodshot *T. Maybe from sleep. Maybe from panic. "Trevor," she finally whispered. I didn't flinch. "How long were you planning to lie to me?" She started, then stopped. Her hand went to her chest like she needed to ground herself. "I didn't. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." She looked back down at the folder. Her fingers hovered above a photo of her and Logan clinking champagne glasses at that boutique hotel in Midtown. It had been a selfie taken by him. He was grinning. She was biting her lip. I was going to stop, she said quietly. I told him I couldn't keep doing it. When? I asked. Before or after the dinner you lied about last Thursday? The one where you told me you had drinks with coworkers while you were in his hotel room. Her face twisted. Not with guilt? With helplessness. I didn't know how to end it. You could have started by telling the truth. She sank into the chair across from me as if her legs had given out. She reached for her mug, then realized she hadn't poured coffee yet. The little things still clung to her even as the world unraveled. I wanted to fix things between us, she said. But every time I tried, I felt like we were too far gone. I didn't think you cared anymore. That line, I didn't think you cared anymore. I could have screamed. Instead, I leaned forward and looked her in the eyes. You didn't think I cared, so you decided to blow up our marriage behind my back? No, she said, tears forming now. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Emily. You didn't trip and fall into this. You made choices. Over and over. You covered your tracks. You mocked me with him. Her eyes widened. Yeah, I said. I saw that message too. About how I'd never suspect a thing. How good men don't look for the trap until they're in it. You really laughed about that. Her hands flew to her face. A sob broke loose. I was messed up. I wasn't thinking clearly. But you were, I cut in. You were clear enough to hide phones, book hotel rooms under fake names, delete emails. Don't tell me you weren't thinking clearly. You were just thinking selfishly. She cried harder now, gasping between words. I didn't want to lose you. I swear. I stood up slowly and walked over to the counter, picking up a manila envelope. I placed it on the table next to the folder. What's that? She asked, already knowing. Divorce papers, I said. Already signed. She looked like she'd been slapped. No, she whispered. Trevor, please. Don't do this. We can work through this. I'll go to therapy. I'll block him. I'll do whatever it takes. I shook my head. You had your chance. I was scared. You weren't scared, I said. You were careful. Calculated. Cold. She stood up now, desperate. She reached for me. Please. Please don't throw this away. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. You did that. I picked up my keys and turned to leave. She chased after me, bare feet on hardwood. Trevor, she begged, blocking the door. You said you loved me. You can't just walk out. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw a stranger wearing her face. I do love you, I said. But I love myself too. And I'm done being the only one protecting this marriage. She stood there frozen, eyes overflowing, lips trembling, like she couldn't believe this was happening. But it was. I walked around her, opened the door, and stepped out into the cool morning air. For the first time in weeks, I breathed deep. And it didn't taste like betrayal. It tasted like peace.